primarily against one afflictive emotion, like anger, but doesn't really help to reduce, say, attachment or arrogant pride or jealousy and so forth. So most of the antidotes are like that. Like love, it also helps to reduce, anger, but it doesn't really help to reduce pride particularly. Oh, it does a little bit, but it's not like a strong antidote for that. Whereas the wisdom realizing emptiness is is an antidote. It's probably the only antidote that really works to reduce all of the other afflictive emotions. I mean, similarly on the afflicted side, like how do the afflictive emotions affect each other? For example, if you become more angry, do you become more arrogant, or do you become more anxious, or do you become, more jealous or something? I mean, definitely you can see the afflictive emotions, they do kind of affect each other, support each other a little bit in the way they function in your mind. But there's not really one afflictive emotion that, I mean, generally they don't directly increase the others in a very substantial way. Whereas, except for ignorance, right? Except for the ignorance grasping at inherently existent self, the innately arising ignorance grasping at inherently existent self, it's like the basis or the substrata for all of the other afflictive emotions. So the stronger that is, then the stronger any of the other afflictive emotions become, right? So on the afflicted side, the stronger our grasping at an inherently existent self is, and then based on that, the self-centered, concern, selfishness or self-centeredness, this obsessive concern exclusively with our own wants and needs and likes, with our own aims, and disconcern for others. Those two attitudes, they increase all of the other afflictive emotions, right? Anger and attachment, greed, jealousy, pride, and so forth. Afflicted pride. So on the afflicted side, the ignorance and selfishness, they increase all the other afflictive emotions. On the side of the antidote, then the wisdom realizing emptiness or selflessness on the one hand, and then also cherishing others, being more altruistic, having altruistic attitude, being more concerned about others than oneself. Those two, they reduce all of the other, they increase all of the other positive emotions like love, compassion, generosity, morality, patience, so forth. And they also decrease or are an antidote to all of the afflictive emotions. So anyway, it's just kind of a tangent. So today we're going to look at patience. Earlier, I think, when we were talking about putting together this little four session course, then Bhaskar kind of requested that I speak about try to use a guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life by Shantideva as a basis. So I have been so far, but especially for this session, I'm basing the presentation primarily on the 6th chapter, the patience chapter of Bodhisattva's way of life, and I put together a document with some of the most important verses from that chapter and just a very brief outline. I think someone requested last time or before that I make it'd be easier to see the verses and so forth if I have to make a PowerPoint presentation. I'd be happy to give you the verses. You can put them into PowerPoint format. I don't have time to make PowerPoint slides for every session because I'm also doing full-time study here at the monastery. So I feel quite happy that I'm putting together an outline for each session. That's quite fortunate, I think. So PowerPoint maybe next year or something. Okay, so let's start with, without me just blah, 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 much more. Let's start with spending a little time generating a positive motivation and trying to generate a little love, compassion, and go for refuge to the Buddha by, I think as we did before, we'll recite the Buddha's name mantra, Tayata Omani Mani Mahamuni Soha, as a way of going for refuge. So wherever you're sitting, get comfortable in your seat. And bring your attention within. Focus your mind on the object of meditation, your breath or your mind. This whole is emphasizing lately, trying to identify the mental consciousness and the nature of the mental consciousness, is that which is clear and known, and trying to identify and kind of place our attention in awareness of that. So it'd be good if you can try to do that for about a minute or so. Generate some concentration. So then, as a basis for generating a positive motivation, it's helpful to visualize oneself surrounded by all sentient beings. So just like usual, then we begin visualizing with your father of this life to your immediate right. Feel how you're interconnected with him and all your male relatives seated to your right and behind you, your grandfathers, uncles, cousins, and so forth. Your male family and friends, imagine them all seated to your right and behind you. And then to your left, your mother of this life and all your female family and friends, seated to your left and behind you. And then those whom you're most prone to become angry, irritated with, imagine seated directly in front of you, facing towards you, about 3 meters distant from you. And then all the other sentient beings who don't fall in either class of friend or antagonist, imagine them seated all around you in human form. So feel how you've been connected with these sentient beings in this life and countless past lives, and countless future lives, and how all of them are the same as oneself and wishing to be free from every form of physical and mental suffering, and wishing to have every happiness, every state of well-being. And then remember how everything you enjoy, from ordinary worldly pleasures up to full enlightenment, all comes about in dependence upon other sentient beings. So feeling our connectedness with them in that way, then try to generate the aspiration to use this session to bring about the welfare of oneself and others, all other sentient beings, without excluding any. And then, if you like, you can visualize Shakyamuni Buddha in the space before you, at the height of your forehead, seated on one which is a fully open lotus blossom, representing perfect renunciation. And then a round moon disc of white light, representing compassion, and a disc of golden yellow light, the sun disc, representing wisdom. Bone that sits Shakyamuni Buddha. So try to remember the Buddha's qualities of loving kindness and compassion, his wisdom, and especially his patience, enduring all kinds of harm, insult, and bearing many hardships for countless eons without getting angry or upset whatsoever. But then especially try to generate the motivation and through engaging with this session, participating in this session, then may I generate the perfection of patience, perfect patience, able to endure any hardship, endure any insult or harm from others, and endure hardship in striving to practice Dharma, just like Shakyamuni Buddha, without ever losing hope or losing faith or becoming angry or upset. So then if you like, you can join me from wherever you are in your own space, then reciting Shakyamuni Buddha's name mantra 3 times. And then imagine going for refuge to Shakyamuni Buddha, together with all of those sentient beings here around you. So imagine Buddha is very pleased with your request and your aspiration. From his holy body, countless light rays radiate out, purifying you and all sentient beings of every obscuration, afflictive obscurations and obscurations to full enlightenment, and every physical and mental suffering and causes of suffering will completely purify. And then imagine from every pore of Buddha's holy body, golden light rays radiate out like wavy pattern, pouring in through the crown of your head and the crown of the head of every sentient being, filling your body completely, blessing you to have every form of physical and mental well-being, and to develop, blessing you to develop all the realizations on the path, from guru devotion up to the state of no more learning, the state of unification, of full enlightenment. You can imagine a replica of Buddha emerges from his body and dissolves into you, and one replica likewise dissolves into every other sentient being. And their body, speech, and mind become one with Buddha's body, speech, and mind. And then finally, imagine Shakyamuni Buddha shrinks in size to the size of your thumb, and comes to abide in the space above the crown of your head. And bless you to fully participate in this session. Okay. So then we start with the actual part, which is me talking a lot. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So patience. Yeah. So I made a little outline. I'll show you in just a second. But I made it. So first, just we'll look at the definition of patience, and then we'll look at the benefits of patience, and then we'll look at three different kinds of patience. The main three divisions. Main three different kinds of patience. So this is according to, again, the sixth chapter in the Bodhisattva Shantideva. And also according to the outlines in the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, Lamrim Chenmo, Venerable Tsokapa. Although there's a lot more detail, that's a very extensive presentation in both, both Bodhisattva and Lamrim Chenmo. So we don't have time to go through all but just the main points today, but I hope to give you kind of a little taste, and then if you're interested, I encourage you to read those two together. His Holiness Dalai Lama often gives that advice, that if you want to know about how to reduce anger, how to increase patience, then read these two together, the sixth chapter of Bodhisattva, which is the patience chapter, together with this section in the Lamrim Chenmo, which is it's translated into English in 3 volumes. So it's in volume 2, where volume 2 covers the 6 perfections. Right. So in the 6 perfections, then patience is the 3rd, right? So it's a quite extensive presentation on each of the 6 perfections there, but especially, yeah, it's a very good detailed presentation on patience, and it follows quite closely Shantideva's presentation, although Tsongkhapa switches the order around a little bit, but it's not so important. So now I'll share my screen. Oops, host. You need to enable screen sharing, so I can share my screen. Frieza, maybe if you unplug your headphones, your volume might work. No? It might. Are you using a laptop or a phone? If you unplug the headphones from your device.
Can you hear me now?
The sound.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Okay. Yes, I can hear you.
I shared your, now you can do your sharing.
Okay, I can, yes, great. Okay, here we go. Here. Okay, can we see? Great, so the definition. First, patience, the definition of patience. So this is from by Tsongkhapa, from the Lamrim Chenmo. But the definition, it's a little bit of a weak definition. He basically just gives the 3 divisions of patience as the definition. Anyway, he says, patience is 1, disregarding harm done to you, right? So when other people harm you, just thinking, whatever, it doesn't matter, disregarding it. 2, accepting the suffering arising in your own mind stream. So when you have suffering arising in your own mind stream, accepting it. And then 3, being certain about the teachings, means the Buddha's teachings, and firmly maintaining belief in them. Right? So this is the main definition. Patience is, and actually it's 3 different kinds of patience. So anyway, we'll discuss more later. But patience is disregarding harm done to you. So it means not getting angry, essentially, right? Accepting suffering. So when others harm you, not getting angry. Accepting suffering arising in your mind. So when you're experiencing suffering, physical or mental suffering, accepting it without becoming angry, without becoming hostile, and without giving up hope. So accepting suffering that you experience. And then 3, being certain about the teachings, the Buddhist teachings, and firmly maintaining belief in them, or maintaining firm belief in them. So it means not getting, when you can see sometimes you're practicing, you're trying to meditate, trying to study, trying to do other practices, trying to follow a spiritual teacher, but you feel like you're not changing as a person, you're not improving, your life's not improving. Things are just as bad as they always were. And you start to lose faith, right? And get frustrated with the teachings. So it's that it doesn't mean that, that, you know, if we're practicing and we don't see any changes happening, not trying to do anything different. Of course, we should try to do things differently to find, you know, a way that we can reap more benefit from the way we engage with the Buddha's teachings. But we shouldn't give up faith, right? We should try to generate a certainty that is very firm and stable, and then maintain our certain confidence in the efficacy, right, of the Buddha's teachings. So it's that kind of patience, being firm and certain about the efficacy of the Buddha's teachings, and then maintaining belief in it. So then Tsongkhapa says there are 3 sets of factors incompatible with these, right? So there are 3 sets of factors that are incompatible with patience. For the first one, for disregarding harm done to you, what's incompatible with that is hostility, right? Becoming angry. So when other people harm us, if we become hostile at them, that's incompatible with patience, right? That's not patience. And then for the second, the second is accepting the suffering arising in your mind stream. So when we have suffering arising in our continuum or in our mind stream, then when we get hostile and we lose courage, this is an important one, losing courage, right? So if you're experiencing a lot of physical and mental discomfort, suffering, and you lose courage, then that's one way of losing patience. You know, it's antithetical to or incompatible with patience. So we need to. So it's important. I mean, one aspect of patience then seems to be that we need to remain courageous, right? Remain determined, no matter how much suffering we experience. And then the third. So for the third, being certain about the teachings and firmly maintaining belief in them. For the third, disbelief and dislike are incompatible. So having disbelief in Buddhist teachings and then generating dislike for Buddhist teachings. So this doesn't only apply to Buddhist teachings. It applies to, I mean, it can apply to any spiritual teaching that you're trying to follow, right? So once you have certain in it, it's your chosen path, then try not to generate, you know, when you suffer a lot, try not to generate disbelief and dislike for that path, for those teachings. Although, of course, we should be skeptical and you know, continually assess whether the path we're following is really a true path or not. And then finally, Tsongkhapa says, perfecting patience means that you simply complete your conditioning to a state of mind where you have stopped your anger and the like, right? So and the like is like, etc. So it means you have stopped your anger, you've stopped your hostility, you've stopped your loss of courage, you've stopped your disbelief, you've stopped your dislike in the Buddha's teachings, right? So again, perfecting patience, this is kind of the summary. Perfecting patience means that you simply complete your conditioning to a state of mind where you have stopped your anger and the like. So several things we can take from this is that perfecting patience means simply that you complete your conditioning, right? So it's something we have to condition ourselves to what? To a state of mind, right? So patience isn't something we practice like with our eyes or with our ears. You know, if someone's acting in a way we don't like, and we just kind of pretend like we don't hear it. Of course, that can help to not get upset, but that physical action or just blocking our ears, that's not patience. Patience is something we practice with our mind, right? So we condition ourselves to conditioning ourselves to a state of mind. So what kind of state of mind? A state of mind where we have stopped our anger. So we don't give rise to anger. We don't give rise to hostility. Don't give rise to loss of courage. Or we don't give rise to dislike and disbelief, and so forth. Okay, so that's the definition. And now let's look at the some of the benefits of patience. So usually we look at the benefits of something as a way of generating enthusiasm for trying to do it, right? So first there's this very nice quote from Asanga's Bodhisattva levels. So this is Tsongkhapa quotes this in Lamrim Chenmo. He says, initially, bodhisattvas consider the benefits of patience. They think persons who have patience will not have many enemies later on. Right? So one, if you have patience, means you don't get angry, then you won't have many enemies. You won't create what is the opposite of friendship, like enemyship with many people, right? You won't create, because if you don't get angry, you don't harm people, then you won't have a lot of people who really dislike you and are out to get you, right? So quite the opposite, you'll have a lot of friends because people trust you and they like you. So persons who have patience will not have many enemies later on, and they will not have many separations from those to whom they are close. I think this is a really interesting one. Personally, I don't usually think about it in, the list is, in other places, it's not usually listed in the benefits of patience. But, if we get angry, if we don't have patience and we get angry again and again, then we create many separations from those who are close, right? So with family members, so over the years, gradually, if we get angry at one family member and then another, and then one relative and then a neighbor, and then, someone at work, and then one of our old, childhood friends, eventually, we gradually burn all these bridges, all these relationships that take years to build up with people in our family, our parents, our siblings, our cousins, with our neighbors, with our, our childhood friends, our work peers at work, and so forth. So, friendships and relationships where we trust one another, we feel close to one another, we can share, more and more things of our life and our personal world about, with other people. That takes years to build up, from our side and from other people's side. But all of that, those relationships, one relationship with someone, it can be totally destroyed in just moments of anger. One instance of really getting angry and kind of losing it, it destroys that relationship. So then, that having been close to a person at one point, and then becoming angry at them, or mutually angry at each other, and then not wanting to continue that relationship at all in the future, it's a sad thing, right? It creates a kind of sadness in our heart that stays with us, maybe for the rest of our life. So the more we don't have patience, right, then the more we have this. So one benefit of patience is we will not have many separations. So this kind of feeling of being separated from, through the force of becoming angry at, being separated from those to whom we were close before, right? So I think this is really it's very important benefit of being patient is, so what's the opposite of this not having many separations from, is that you feel connected with, the people in your family, your close family, your extended family, your neighbors, your people at work, even, some you might like, some you might not like very much even, but at least if you practice patience with them, you maintain, a harmonious relationship. You maintain lines of communication. You maintain a sort of friendship with them. And that, even if it's close, excellent. Even if it's not very close, at least it's a source of something you can be proud of on the one hand, and something, it's just kind of a source of some joy, to have connection with other people. Loneliness and being totally cut off. You see people who are angry and get angry again and again and again. They end up sort of cutting themselves off from everybody else, and they live all alone in this very kind of lonely existence. And it's something sad for them, it's sad for other people to see, and so forth. Okay, so that's another benefit. They will have much happiness and contentment, right? So you're happy and you're content. Feel content with yourself because you don't have regret about the way you've treated other people. You feel content with other people because you think, well, even if they don't act the way I like, they don't act in ways I think are good, I approve of, but that's because of, they're controlled by their own afflictive emotions, so it doesn't irritate you, upset you. Then, so people who are patient, they will have no regret at the time of death, and upon the disintegration of their bodies, they will be reborn among the deities and the happy realms of high status. So you take good rebirth in the future. You have no regret. At the time of death, your mind is at peace because you don't have regret from having gotten angry at people. So, I mean, for many people, one of the most difficult things maybe they have to face in life is if they've gotten really angry at, especially the people close to them, siblings or the children or the parents. And then, when one or the other is on their deathbed, if they can't really apologize and make amends, then that can be another wound that people carry with them for their whole life. There's someone close to them they became angry at, and they didn't mend that broken relationship, and then one of them died. Then by looking at such benefits, they too are patient. So bodhisattvas also are patient. They engage others. So bodhisattvas, they are patient. Then they engage others in upholding patience. So they encourage others to be patient, to practice patience. They also praise patience. And when they see patient persons, they are delighted and full of joy, right? So these are some of the benefits. So that's from the bodhisattva's levels at Sangha. So then these are from Bodhicharvatara, A Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. Some other benefits of patience. Whatever wholesome deeds, such as venerating the Buddhas and generosity, that have been amassed over 1,000 eons, will all be destroyed in one moment of anger. Right? So in one moment of becoming angry at someone, especially angry at a bodhisattva, then all the merit and the virtue, the wholesome, the positive energy, a virtue of wholesome deeds that you've engaged in over eons can all be destroyed by one moment of anger, because anger is such a powerful destructive emotion. So it destroys our roots of virtue. There is no transgression like hatred. So therefore, there is no transgression like hatred, and no fortitude like patience. Thus, I should strive in various ways to meditate on patience. Right? So these two verses are essentially saying another benefit of patience is that we protect the store of merit and positive energy we've created. Right? So whenever we engage in a virtuous action, like not stealing, not killing, not lying, and conversely being honest, protecting the lives of others, protecting the possessions of others from being harmed, then we create merit. But if we get very angry, in one moment we can destroy a lot of merit. So then we don't experience the fruits of that, the positive results of that in the future. So one benefit of practicing patience is we protect our merits. That one's maybe a little esoteric, a little hard to see clearly. But some other more kind of tangible benefits of patience are, while in cyclic existence, patience causes beauty, right? Because if we're calm and patient, then we have a very we have a very peaceful demeanor, right? A very peaceful facial expression. Our bodies seem like soft, our movements are smooth. So compare that to the opposite. When someone's really angry, their face gets distorted. When they're full of dislike and hostility, their face is kind of twisted and scrunched up, and it's not attractive, right? There's no pleasure in seeing the person. Also, the body seems, they tense their muscles and they kind of, seem very threatening, so it's not pleasant to look at such a person who's, who's really angry and irritated all the time. So one is, we're attractive. Also, patience is considered to be, probably by extension, practicing patience is you create merit to take rebirth with an attractive body, attractive features. So then it's pleasing for other people to see. So that's a way of creating merit. But also, when other people are pleased by seeing us, then it gives us greater opportunity to influence other people, right? So if we want to teach Dharma, encourage others in spiritual Dharma practice, then it's helpful to be attractive to other people, right? Because we can easily have more positive influence on them. So patience causes beauty, causes health, right? So think of all the health, the ways that anger harms our physical health, I spoke about before. So patience has the opposite. It supports our immune system, our physical health, and mental health, of course. And it causes us to be renowned, right? It causes our reputation to spread, people to like us and speak well about us. Because of these, I shall live for a very long time. So there's studies that show people become angry again and again and again. It shortens their lifespan. They're more likely to contract different physical ailments and die. earlier than people who don't become angry, people who are patient. I shall live for a very long time and win the extensive pleasure of the universal chakra kingdom. Right? So you, again, accumulate merit to take good rebirth. And then forbearance, so it's patience. Forbearance makes you attractive and dear to the sublime one. So it means dear to the Buddhas and other highly realized beings. They look favorably upon you. You become wise in knowing what is appropriate and what is not. Right? So again, think about how anger makes us confused. When we're very angry, we confuse like what is an appropriate way to act and what is not. We lose that ability to clearly discriminate. So patience causes us to be the opposite. Right? The more we're patient, our mind is more clear, and in different situations we can see more clearly, oh, this is an appropriate way to speak and act, so that I can do things in a way that I bring about the welfare of both self and others. Right? Makes you wise in knowing what is appropriate and what is not. Afterward, you gain birth as a Deva human, and it secures the exhaustion of negative karma. So it helps exhaust negative karma. Okay, so those are the benefits of patience. Yeah. So now the three kinds of patience are cultivating the patience that accepts suffering. So this is the order they're presented in by Shantideva. Cultivating patience that accepts suffering, right? And then cultivating patience that is intent on Dharma, right? And then cultivating patience that pays no heed to those who cause harm. So this, Tsongkhapa puts this one first in his presentation in Lamrim Chemo. Shantideva puts it last for whatever reason. So again, so the three are from the, this one to the others. So there's the patience that pays no heed to those who cause harm. So the patience that bears others harming us, with their mind or with their speech or with their body, or by slandering us, trying to destroy our reputation and so forth. So patience that bears those who, or pays no heed to those who cause us harm, right? So being patient with others who cause us harm, then being patient, that the patience that is intent on Dharma practice, that doesn't give up Dharma practice. And then the patience that accepts suffering, right? Yeah. So those are the three kinds. Yeah. Okay. So I put together a few verses, mostly from Shantideva in regard to each. So let's look first at the patience that accepts suffering, right? So first think for a minute the different kinds of, different kinds of suffering, some you experience. Maybe it's good to bring to mind a kind of, tangible example for ourselves. And then as we read the verses, we can try to imagine how that advice applies to our situation. Right? So think of some of the kinds of suffering that arises in your mind, say in your mind, also in your body. And then let's look at the verses and see if we can apply to our situation. So he says, the causes of happiness sometimes occur, but the causes of suffering are frequent. So he's saying, suffering is something that occurs a lot, whether you like it or not. Happiness, the causes of happiness are more difficult because the causes of happiness are practicing virtue, right? Developing positive states of mind, which for most sentient beings is difficult. It's something they have to put effort into. Whereas the causes of suffering, like being jealous, being miserly, being selfish, those afflictive emotions, we don't have to put any effort into generating those. They automatically just come. So the causes of suffering are frequent. So of course it's the case that we're going to experience suffering a lot. So that's just kind of the reality that we're in. We need to accept. So that's one way of accepting. Then without suffering, so then a different way is that thinking how without suffering, there's no renunciation, right? So without suffering, it's difficult to see, it's difficult to generate a wish to be free from samsara, right? To be free from, old age, sickness, death, being, all the sufferings of samsara. being separated from that which we like, being too hot, being too cold, being hungry, being thirsty. If we didn't have all those sufferings, then we wouldn't see the faults of samsara. So here is especially thinking about samsara, because renunciation means, remember, is a wish to be free from not just the suffering of this life, not just the suffering of future lives, but to be free from all of the suffering of samsara. So it's the wish to achieve nirvana, the state of perfect peace, which is beyond birth and death through the forces of karma and afflictive emotions, right? So actually these days for my class at Sarah here, where in this year we have an exam, in just 1 month, I have an exam on the life story of the Buddha. So at the beginning of the Buddha's life story, it's described how, because actually Buddha was enlightened before he, appeared as Prince Siddhartha on this earth. So it's described that when he was in this Tushita heaven, before he showed the aspect of taking rebirth on earth, he was looking, where throughout the universe, where would be the best place for me to take the aspect of taking rebirth and teach the Dharma. And he can see that, the other beings in most other places, they're not really suitable receptacles for Buddha's teachings, because the hell beings and the hungry ghosts, they have too much suffering, right? Their minds are totally occupied with the suffering they experience. So there's no space or ability to try to practice Dharma. Animals, their minds are very dull, right? No matter how much you explain to them, they can't understand. They don't have that capacity. When a person doesn't have that capacity to intellectually understand Buddhist teachings, when they take rebirth as a human being, as an animal, as an animal. So there's no point in the Buddha taking rebirth as an animal and trying to teach animals, right? And then if you look at the gods of the form and formless realms, they're in deep states of absorption. But even the gods of the desire realm, then they have too much pleasure, right? They don't have any hardship. They don't have any physical sickness. They don't have to go to work. They don't have to pay mortgage. They don't have pandemics. They don't have, irritating neighbors. They don't have, family feuds. So it's like their lives are totally like blissful, They radiate, from their bodies, they radiate light. So they don't have to rely on, backup batteries and generators, right? Like we do during the monsoon. They don't have to farm and eat food, so they don't have to go shopping. They don't have to cook. They don't have to wash the dishes. They don't get, upset stomachs and so forth. So the gods, because their physical and mental well-being is just like perfect, they have so much enjoyment in samsara that for them to generate a wish to be free from samsara is very difficult, right? It's very difficult. It's kind of similar to in this life, people who take interest in spiritual teachings, seriously practicing not only Buddhism but any spiritual path. Usually it's because they've experienced some real hardship. They've really suffered somewhat in their life, and that's what makes them yearn for something more than just having good food and good laughs and entertainment, right? Whereas people who have never really had much hardship in life, they always have enough money, they're around nice people, they have good family, they have good health, everything goes well for them. For those kind of people, often there's no real impetus to take serious interest in practicing any spiritual path, right? So the point is here that one good, so this is about, take you back to the verse that we're looking at, that without suffering there is no renunciation, right? So how this is, the patience that accepts suffering is looking at the benefits of suffering, right? Because I experience suffering, it helps me to think more deeply about, not only the suffering of myself, but the suffering of others as well. So it helps me generate compassion, but also it helps me think more deeply about why I suffer. Why have I taken rebirth? Why have I taken rebirth in the form I have? Why do I experience hunger? Why do I experience thirst? Why do I experience loneliness? Why do I experience frustration? Why do I, why do I get sick? Why do I get old? Why do I die? What happens after I die? So suffering helps us to become aware of and think more seriously about all those really important questions that actually illuminate our minds to the meaning of life, to the deeper meaning of life, right? So in that way, suffering is really helpful So thinking about that helps us just bear suffering with grace and accept it, right, as a fact of life. Not accept it in the way that we don't try to do anything to ameliorate it, but accept it in a way that we don't get, it doesn't upset our minds. We don't get totally frustrated and get angry and thereby create more suffering. But rather we bear it with grace and we do what we can to reduce and gradually eliminate the causes of suffering. So therefore, mind, you should stand firm. Right? I like the way Shantideva speaks to his own mind. He like talks to himself. And then this next verse, there is nothing whatsoever that is not, so this is encouraging us. There is nothing whatsoever that is not made easier through acquaintance, right? So becoming acquainted with doing something, it becomes easier and easier and easier. Like just this past week, my little niece, she's like 3 years old, she's learning to ride a bicycle, right? So she had her first big like bicycle crash, you know. We can all probably have something like that. So my brother-in-law sent a picture with her right after her bicycle crash. I'm not sure how ethical it is to take a picture of someone when they're in like, you know, this state of shock like she was. But anyway, so her hair is all messed up and she's got like a big scratch on her forehead and her face, her lip is bloodied, and you know, the poor thing. Sorry, I lost track of my point. Better go back. I have to go back to the document. What I'm talking about. Okay, so like bicycle riding, yeah, it becomes easier through acquaintance. Yeah, riding a bicycle, it's not difficult. It's not easy at first. You know, using your new mobile phone at first, you don't know how it works. It's not so easy. But gradually, by becoming acquainted with it, it becomes easier and easier and easier. And then before you know it, it's like second nature. So the patience of accepting suffering, bearing suffering, of course, it's not easy at first. But if we practice again and again and again, accepting different kinds of hardships that we encounter, different kinds of difficult people, difficult thoughts arising in our mind, physical pain and hardship. If we practice, you know, kind of bearing it, then gradually we become better and better and better at doing that, and it becomes easier and easier, right? So there's nothing whatsoever that is not made easier through acquaintance. So through becoming acquainted with small harms, I shall learn to patiently accept greater harms. And then he really goes crazy here, Shantideva. He says, who has not seen this to be so with trifling sufferings, such as the bites of snakes? Okay, who here thinks that the bites of snakes is a trifling suffering? I'm not sure. I'm horrified of getting bitten by a snake. And insects. Okay, insects, yeah, mosquitoes, we can let bite us, you know, if there's not a lot of malaria in the area. And learn to bear it, right? And then feelings of hunger and thirst. This is definitely one we can try practicing, you know. And then being tired, being exhausted, being kind of frazzled, burnt out. We can remember in all those different situations to try when we're a little tired, we're a little hungry, we're a little irritated, try practicing patience, right? And then by doing that again and again and again through acquaintance, familiarity, we raise our threshold of, just like we can raise our threshold of pain, we can raise our threshold of patience, of endurance, forbearance. Right. Okay, I'll just read quickly through the next few verses. I should not be impatient with heat, cold, wind, and rain, sickness, bondage, and beatings. So you see, it kind of builds up there. I mean, heat and cold, okay, it's not that difficult. Wind and rain, a little more tough to be patient with. Sickness can be really tough, you know, if you really have pain, like bad headache, bad stomachache. Bondage, you know, being bound, like handcuffed or put in prison, really difficult. And then being beaten, you know, even more difficult. So I should not be impatient, right? So why should I not be impatient with these things? For if I am, the harm they cause me will increase, right? So in any of those situations, when we're too hot or too cold, we're out in the wind and the rain, we're sick, even we're bound in prison or being beaten. In any of those situations, we have to check: is it true that if we're not patient, if we lose it, if we get really irritated and angry and hostile towards the weather or towards the other people, then we create more suffering for ourselves, right? The harm that's caused to us is even more. So imagine, like, if you're, say, unlawfully, unjustly imprisoned, and then, but you're totally furious with the situation. You create so much more suffering for yourself than if you're patient with the situation. You accept the situation, and then you very steadfastly do whatever you can do to get out of that situation, right? To get out of the situation, to be free from it. So again, you can see how patience helps keep our mind more clear, and then helps us act more effectively to ameliorate the causes of the suffering we're experiencing. And then some, here he gives a nice example. Some, when they see their own blood, become especially brave and steady. You know, some people, when they see their own blood, they get a cut or a wound and they see their blood, they become very brave and steady. But others, when they see the blood of others, you know, some, when they see the blood of other people, not even their own blood, the blood of other people, they faint and fall unconscious. These reactions come from the mind being either steady or timid, right? So from our mind being steady in that situation, or our mind being timid in that situation, we either become more courageous or we faint and fall unconscious. No, we faint and fall unconscious. Therefore, I should disregard harms caused to me and not be affected by suffering, right? So Shantideva is saying basically, whether we get irritated and timid and fearful, you know, or angry in a situation, or lose faith in a situation, that comes from our mind. It's not the cause of other people. You know, when we get, when it's like it's raining and raining and raining and we're getting depressed, we don't get angry at the sky and the clouds, do we? That would be totally silly. I mean, if we did, we just create more suffering for ourselves. You know, if we get really irritable, you know, because it's raining, it's kind of like silly. You know, we can't do anything to stop that. So similarly, well, this is going on to a little different point, but similarly, when there's another person harming us, if we get angry at the person, we cause more harm to ourselves. And that anger, we have to recognize it comes from our mind. It's our mind that's getting angry. It's our mind that gets irritable. It's our mind that gets annoyed with other people. Usually when we get angry, we tend to put the blame on others. They're making me angry. You know, don't you make me angry. As if other people make something happen in our mind. Other people do something, but we react to it in a certain way. So, I mean, a big step in practicing patience is learning to take responsibility for what's happening in our mind, right? What's happening in our mind, whether we're reacting with patience, whether we're being irritable, you know, whether we're getting angry, or whether we're rejoicing in the opportunity to practice patience, you know, whether we're really using that opportunity to generate renunciation, to generate compassion, you know, to generate joy at the opportunity to bear hardship, you know, then that's all up to us, right? How we use our mind. So of course, it is the case that oftentimes these negative reactions, they come automatically, right? Whereas using a situation in a positive way is something we have to put effort into and do conscientiously. It doesn't come automatically. That's true, but it's up to us whether we just follow our you know, automatic patterns of reaction that we've been following from beginningless time, you know, countless past lives until now, and that keep us stuck in samsara. It's our choice whether we just keep following our habitual emotional, you know, ways of reacting to situations that cause us to suffer, or we decide to change, right? We decide to try as much as we can to react in that situation in a different way, right? Of course, if we're an animal, we don't have the ability to make that choice, right? It's our privilege, and even if we're a human being, if we don't have access to good examples, good role models, spiritual teachings, good advice, again, we don't have the ability to make that choice, because we don't know anything else. But in the situation that we're in, where we've met, you know, excellent spiritual teachings, the teachings of Buddha and other masters, and we have excellent role models like His Holiness Dalai Lama and Geshe Dorje Damdol and others, and we have intelligence, we have understanding, we've heard, you know, how to use different situations to not, you know, become attached, not to become angry, not to become jealous, not to be selfish, but rather be all the opposite things, right? To be more concerned about others, to be more patient, to be more generous, to be more compassionate. So it's up to us whether we practice the advice or not, right? It's just like if you're sick, You know, if you're sick and you don't know you're sick, you know, if you have a sickness and it's causing all kinds of problems, like, I don't know, some kind of allergy or something, or, you know, a tumor even, and it's causing you pain, but you don't know you're sick, you can't do anything about it. That's like an animal. You know, they have suffering. I mean, they may know they're suffering, but they don't really understand like what it is. Or if you're sick and you know you're sick, but you don't know of any remedies to the sickness, again, you can't do anything about it. So that's more like a human being that they know they have a lot of problems, but they haven't contacted any good advice or spiritual teachings to teach them what to do. But if you're sick and you've been to the doctor and he's explained what's wrong with you and he's prescribed medicine, then all you have to do is take the medicine, right? So then if you don't take the medicine, you don't follow the prescription of the doctor, then that's totally your choice. I mean, you're choosing, you know, you choose whether to take the medicine or not. So in our case, it's like we've recognized we have suffering. We've met the doctor, you know, the Buddha, Buddha's teachers. We've received all the advice, right? So it's up to us whether we decide, you know, and it's not like we just make a decision once and then it's done. It's like in every moment, we have to remember to decide how to react, right? In every situation, every time a difficult circumstance arises, we have to remember the advice and remember that we have the ability to decide how to react. It's our minds. Yeah. So, yeah, so this is a really important point. Furthermore, and then finally, furthermore, suffering has good qualities. Through being disheartened with it, arrogance is dispelled, right? So suffering helps dispel arrogance. You know, I think in my experience, I see that a lot when I get really sick. Sometimes, you know, once a year, I get a bad cold, get like, you know, the flu, get a fever. Then it really kind of knocks my ego down, you know, a few notches, realizing that actually, you know, when we're healthy and, you know, kind of, you know, every day being busy, being productive, you know, doing things, it can lead to a little bit of arrogance, you know? that a little bit of, yeah, maybe I'm kind of, you know, comparing ourselves with others. You know, so feeling I'm better with others. I'm doing so much. I'm so healthy. I'm eating well. I'm exercising. But when we get sick, it really kind of knocks that down a little bit, realizing how much we're not in control of ourselves. Even, you know, we eat the right food, we exercise, we try to, you know, schedule each day well, use our time well, do things. But actually, when we get sick, we realize we don't really have control. You know, we're still under the influence, under the power of karma and afflictive emotions. So suffering has good qualities. Through being disheartened with it, arrogance is dispelled, and then compassion arises for those in cyclic existence. That's one of the most important. I mean, you can really be compassionate in a much more visceral way than you can when you don't suffer, right? So this is another, yeah, probably another reason the Buddha didn't you know, doesn't teach the Dharma so much in the higher realms, God realms, and so forth, is because it's difficult for beings there to develop compassion because they don't have suffering. That's also why it's emphasized that, you know, at the very outset of our Dharma practice, it's really important to try to generate the aspiration to not just achieve freedom from nirvana, freedom from samsara, right? Not just to achieve nirvana, which is a freedom from samsara, which is a state of peace for ourselves alone, but rather to generate bodhicitta, try to generate the aspiration to achieve the state of full enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. So why is that important right at the outset of the path? Because we can, I mean, although we can achieve the state of an arhat, right, the state of freedom from samsara much more quickly, you know, just one lifetime or just a few lifetimes, much more quickly than we can achieve enlightenment. It's a very much shorter path. So we can quickly get free from suffering, you know, if we want. But the problem is we have the potential to achieve full enlightenment. And eventually we want to fully develop that potential. So if we quickly achieve the state of an arhat, who's achieved nirvana, freedom from samsara, then we no longer experience suffering. And then it's very difficult to generate the intensity of compassion that a bodhisattva has, because you yourself don't experience suffering. So it's very difficult to have really strong empathy and really strongly generate the determination to free all other sentient beings from suffering, right? When we ourselves don't have it. So that's why, yeah. So that's why actually, and then so if you achieve the state of an arhat, then it takes you a long, long, long time to achieve the state of a Buddha. Whereas if you skip that hero's path, you don't enter the hero's path of the path of solitary realizers. It's the path of the what do you say? The path of individual liberation is called. If you just go straight to try to go straight to the Bodhisattva path, then you can generate very strong compassion and this totally selfless or other-centered compassion. It's called the exceptional attitude, the determination where you take the responsibility upon yourself to free all sentient beings from suffering. So this attitude. I mean, compassion. Those training on the pratimoksha vehicle and arhats, they have, bodhisattvas have, but arhats, well, let's say on those training on the pratimoksha path, they don't have this exceptional attitude where I myself take upon myself responsibility to free all sentient beings from suffering. That compassion they don't have. So if we directly enter the bodhisattva path, then we can more quickly generate that attitude and then generate bodhicitta and much more quickly achieve enlightenment and thereby much more quickly be of great benefit. Once we're enlightened, we offer, immense benefit to countless sentient beings. So we can much more quickly reach that state and then more quickly free other sentient beings from suffering. Right? Okay, so all of that was here. Compassion arises for those in cyclic existence, and then negativity is shunned and joy is found in virtue. Right, so because when we suffer, so these are all reasons why we should accept suffering bear suffering with acceptance, right? The patience that accepts suffering, that experiences and endures suffering with acceptance, right? So what it helps, one way is to look at the positive qualities. Reduces arrogance, helps us generate more compassion for other sentient beings in cyclic existence. And also when we recognize clearly that why am I suffering? It's because I've created non-virtue, because I've created negative karma in the past. That's the reason I'm suffering. So if we have that wisdom of the law of cause and effect, then whenever we suffer, it reminds us in this life now, as much as I can, I need to refrain from harming others. I need to refrain from engaging in non-virtuous actions, like killing, stealing, lying, slander, using harsh speech, and so forth, and following anger, following attachment. So when we suffer, if we can tie that with our experience of hardship. So now think about the kind of, I asked you at the beginning, right? Think about some different kinds of suffering you have these days, right? And how can we apply this advice to it, right? So think of the ones, whatever you're thinking about. So check. On the basis of that, can you generate compassion for others? Does it reduce your arrogance? And can you tie that, your experience of suffering, to karma, to the law of cause and effect? That, any experience of suffering cannot happen without its cause, a non-virtuous action or a negative karma having been created beforehand, right? So I created the causes. I mean, check how it affects your mind. To think, I created the causes for having this, this physical discomfort, this physical pain, or this mental pain, this mental discomfort, disease. In short, this suffering. So it's easy to say, all suffering we experience, it comes from negative karma we created. But that just leaves it at a very intellectual kind of abstract level. We need to bring it down to the level of very specific examples, right? Yeah, so try to do that just for a moment now, and reflect in your own mind, right? So think of some specific suffering experience you're having these days, and then try to relate it to your karma. And then see if you can translate that into a determination to not create negative karma now and going forward, now and henceforth, right now and in the future. So you can try to meditate like that more in the future in your own time. But you can see for that to be really effective, you really have to have strong conviction about karma, about the law of cause and effect. You know, if you don't really have strong conviction that my experiences of suffering are arising primarily due to non-virtuous karma I've created in the past, either previously in this life or in previous lives, then it's difficult to give rise to the determination, you know, to really the conviction that if I refrain from creating non-virtuous karma, then I will not suffer in the future. Right? But that's what Shantideva is saying here, is that one benefit of suffering, a good quality of suffering, is that negativity is shunned and joy is found in virtue, right? So joy is found in virtue means we see that we take joy in doing good things, right? For others, for ourselves, by generating positive qualities and then doing things which actually directly benefit others, practicing generosity, practicing honesty, and so forth. Yeah, so because we're running out of time and I want to just answer your questions for the next 15 minutes, then I won't go through the rest of the verses, there they are. But I'll just go through a couple in relation to the next two divisions of patience. So the next kind of patience is cultivating the patience that is intent on Dharma. So here, there's just two verses here. So when one sees an enemy or even a friend committing an improper action, by thinking that such things arise from conditions, I shall remain in a happy frame of mind. So it means by thinking that, you know, when people act in a way we feel is improper and wrong, seeing that, you know, it's not that they just decided to act that way all of a sudden, but they have afflictive emotions in their mind, and then you know, ignorance from past lives. They've created, you know, someone's created negative karma in order to be an object of such harmful actions. So there's different conditions that come together. So it helps us, we can use that situation to reflect on Dharma and be patient, you know, remain in a happy state of mind, that we can use that situation to reflect on Dharma and in different ways, and rather than giving up Dharma practice. If things were brought into being by choice, then since no one wishes to suffer, suffering would not occur to any embodied creature. So it's not that people choose to suffer, right? It's that, you know, suffering is brought about due to you know, different causes and conditions, mainly the afflictive emotions and karma. Yeah, but more important with the patience, I think, of that is intent on Dharma, is really generating, like His Holiness Dalai Lama always encourages us, to really generate a sound basis, a sound understanding of, you know, how the Buddha's teachings have the ability to protect us from suffering, right? So that really comes back to seeing that the root of all suffering is ignorance, and how the Buddha's teachings help us eliminate that ignorance. I mean, all the different antidotes to different afflictive emotions, they do. In our own, we can get some experience of how they work, and then you know, gain more and more confidence in the Buddha and the Sangha as well. And then finally, cultivating patience that pays no heed to those who harm us. So I'll just read this first verse by Aryadeva from his 400 stanzas. Actually, just as a doctor does not fight, but helps patients who are possessed by spirits, although they get angry, right? So imagine there's a doctor, imagine there's someone possessed by a spirit, and they're kind of, you know, they're like going crazy. They're getting really angry and trying to harm all the people around them. But the doctor trying to help them, they don't get angry at the person because they know the person is not in control of themselves. They're totally, you know, possessed by a spirit, or possessed by, you know, a mental illness, for example. So they don't get angry at the patient, right? But rather they're totally patient with the person because they know the person is not in control of himself. And then he says, so the sage, means the Buddha, the sage sees, or means the Muni, actually, the sage sees that the afflictions are at fault, not the persons who have the afflictions. Right? So this is very similar to this famous verse by Shantideva about the stick. If a person's wielding a stick and beating them, you don't get angry at the stick, you get angry at the person, right? Because the stick's not in control of its actions, right? Of its action of beating you. So here, there's this famous reasoning that if someone's doing something to harm us, we shouldn't get angry at the person, because the person is being controlled by their afflictive emotions, right? So the sage sees that the afflictions are at fault, right? It's the afflictions, the anger and ignorance and selfishness and greed and jealousy and so forth in the mind of the person who's harming us that is at fault. It's not the person who has the afflictions. The person who has the afflictions, we should generate compassion towards and be patient with. Right? So we always have to divide up the person and their actions, the person and their contaminated or their afflicted emotions, right? Their disturbing emotions in their mind. Okay, so that's where I'll stop talking there today and ask for questions. Oh yeah. Can I share with you the document? Yeah, I didn't do that. How do I? Oh, here. I think I can figure it out. Let me try. I've never done this actually. I'm doing it right now for the first time.
Legtsok, you have to go into the chat, open the chat, and there's a file. It's written.
Yeah, I know. I'm on it. Fraser.
Okay.
I'm almost there. I think. Yeah, I am. I'm almost there. Okay. But in the meantime, if you guys have other questions, you can ask me. Type them in the chat or raise your hand and Frieza unmute you. Boom, there it is. Network disconnected. Resend.
You need to close your document first.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye document.
Charu, you have a question?
Yeah. Sorry, you must have a question.
Oh, yeah, we got the file.
You have a question every time. You're welcome.
I have a question, but it's not about patience.
It's okay. It can be about anything.
It's about something else.
Sure.
What is shamatha meditation? It's a Buddhist meditation. Samatha or shamat?
Yeah.
Shamatha meditation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shamatha meditation. Basically, a way to translate it is placement meditation. Basically, it means you fix your attention on an object of meditation, usually your breath, or it could be your mind, and you just try to keep your attention there without being distracted, right? So you try to keep your mind from wandering off to other things. You try to maintain a continuity of focus exclusively on that object for as long as you can, right? So if you're watching a breath, you try to be fully aware of the sensations of breathing without thinking about anything else, without thinking about the past or the future, without paying attention to sounds outside or things that you see. You just focus exclusively on the sensation of breathing, the experience of breathing. And then when you see your attention wander off, you let go of those distractions and bring your attention back to the object of meditation. And then so you try to make a longer and longer period of attention like that.
Can it be on a mantra?
Yes, it can be. Yeah, can be.
Yeah, or on a guru?
Also, yeah, it can be. Basically, anything you can use as an object for shamatha meditation. Yeah.
Okay.
You can use a visualization, like you might have a picture of your guru that you like, but you shouldn't. But the thing is, the meditation should be done with your mental consciousness. So it means it's not the case that you just look at the image of the guru. Say you want to meditate on the image of your guru. You can put it like a photograph in front of you, but you shouldn't just sit and look at the photograph. That's not shamatha meditation. Rather, you can look and then try to close your eyes or just put your gaze down and don't look at the photograph and visualize. Try to generate in your imagination, generate a visual image of your guru or a deity.
No,
Or,
it's mental. You do it mentally.
Yeah. It's a focusing your mental consciousness, not focusing your eyes or your ears or your smell consciousness.
Yeah.
It's your mental consciousness. That's very important.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes a mantra and the visualization come together.
Yeah, oftentimes you should combine them. It's good.
Yeah.
But usually, I mean, there can be, you could, I mean, create very, very complex visualizations. But the thing is that you have to distinguish between, when you're building up the visualization and creating different details, that's not placement meditation. That's analytical meditation, right?
Yeah.
That's more like, what is it? Shamatha, Vipassana. It's analytical meditation. But then when you spend a few minutes like building up the details, and then with whatever you've generated, you stop and you just focus on what image you generated. At that point, it's shamatha.
Okay.
It's similarly with like, say patience. We're talking about patience here, bring it back to the topic today. Like you can try to, think of a situation that you really got irritated in the past. Imagine being in that situation again. And then imagine practicing patience. Instead of reacting and getting irritated like you did before, imagine being in the same situation, the person is saying the same thing, doing the same things, you feel the same way physically or mentally, but you practice patience.
Yes.
Right? So you generate, you have to, that's all analytical meditation, right? Imagine a situation, imagining generating patience. But if you can get to a point where you have some kind of strong, stable sense of patience, then you just stop. You remain immersed in that frame of mind, right? In that attitude of patience. So at that point, you practice shamatha meditation, placement. And then gradually that experience will weaken and reduce. And then again, you do the analysis to generate patience.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, I'm going to start calling names here if nobody else raises their hand.
Legtsok, I have one question.
Oh, great.
My question is, say if while doing, your when you have these disturbing emotions, there are times when you are more self-obsessed kind of thing. Not self-obsessed in a bad way, but say for example, when you're sitting down on a meditation and when you're on your breath, and then you become more aware about your the body changes or your mental changes and all that, and which post meditation you really think about it and you elaborate on that so much that it sometimes become a little bit as an obsession kind of thing. If you I hope you understand what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
And so then in that sense, how do you get out of it? I mean, what is the method? Do you then create a focus which is outside of it, or how do you just come out of that? Because I hope you can understand what I'm trying to say.
I think so. I mean, it kind of sounds like you're thinking too much, in short.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I have a big problem. I have a lot of experience with that. Yeah, I think, one thing it helps to try to be more just in the moment, right? Let go of thinking about the past and the future and try to just relax, be more fully aware of everything that's happening in the present moment and be more deliberate about whatever we're doing, right? So whether we're cooking or cleaning or we're working on the computer, try to not think so much about other things unrelated to our immediate tasks, is one hand. And then instead of, if you see that kind of being too much aware of thinking too much about my body and my breathing and what's happening in my mind, instead of just like wondering and observing and thinking about what's happening in the mind, rather use that energy. It shows we have a lot of awareness, we have a lot of mental energy, which is good, right? I mean, we do need to think a lot, actually. But the problem is that too often we think in ways that are just kind of neither here nor there. You know, we just think about all kinds of stuff, and it exhausts us, and it's interesting, but it doesn't really help us make any progress in the way we want to change as a person, right? So we need to take that mental energy and try to focus it more into thinking in a way that's going to bring more awareness, you know, like of dependent arising, for example, something we can always reflect upon. What are all the different, you know, causes and conditions that have given rise to this present moment? What are all the different aspects of this experience I'm having? And then how is my mind imputing on me, on, you know, on whatever I'm doing, you know, me, the person who's acting, my body, how is my mind creating the perceptions I have? I mean, that's maybe a little difficult one, but we can, I mean, to be more simple, we can just try to generate like loving kindness in any moment, you know, that
loving kindness to the situation or to self or to others?
Both, everything, you know. Yeah, caring about, wishing that whatever we're doing bring about the well-being, contribute to the well-being of ourselves, contribute to the well-being of others. I mean, it's a very simple mind, you know. I mean, that's one thing I really like about loving kindness. It's a very simple attitude, and it's something we already very naturally have a degree of, so it's quite easy to increase. So whenever we're, you know, we find we're just thinking about, you know, too many things, and it's becoming too, like, we're making our life so much more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah.
It can help us to come back to this thought, you know, may I be well, may I be happy, may all sentient beings be well, may they be happy. What I'm doing now in some way may contribute to the well-being and the happiness of myself and all sentient beings. And just try to dwell on that attitude more, or compassion. Those are some things.
Yeah,
And then another one is just try to, you know, like when you practice placement meditation, especially, you focus on your mind. Just, you know, just try to observe your mind without reacting. So don't try to reduce, when you're having too many thoughts, don't try to reduce them, but also don't follow them. You know, don't feed into the thoughts by being fascinated with the thoughts and trying to think more, right? Don't put effort into thinking more if you see that the way you're thinking is not really constructive. And try to go back to, well, what is the mind that is thinking? You know, go back to just observing your stream of consciousness and watch the thought. Try to create this perspective of an observer where I'm not the thoughts, right? The thoughts are arising in my mind. Why? It's kind of because thoughts have an inertia, you know, because we've habituated ourselves to thinking a lot about different things, right? So try to just let the thoughts come and watch how they also go. You know, where do they arise from? Where do they go? What is the source of the thoughts? Go back to the source and just try to remain just present of your awareness itself, and then let the thoughts just be kind of like, you know, like shadows kind of dancing on the wall, very not substantial. But again, it takes effort, you know, to do that.
Yeah, but then yeah, that will work. Let me try these few techniques.
Yeah. So there's,
thank you.
Yeah, being more aware of the present moment, generating more positive attitudes like loving kindness, compassion, and then trying to just let the thoughts go and focus on the source of the thoughts, the mind, which is the stream of awareness, stream of consciousness, which is the very basis for the possibility of the thoughts arising.
Thank you.
I don't see another question. So I can add, there's this very nice analogy in this regard by Gyalpo Khyentse Rinpoche. I saw in a commentary, a book that's a commentary he made on the 100 Pieces of Advice to the People of Tingri by Padampa Sangye. So there, Gyalpo Khyentse Rinpoche says, you know, when we're meditating, we should be like a lion versus being like a dog. So how are a lion and a dog different? then when there's a person who throws a stick, what does the dog do? The dog chases after the stick. What does the lion do? The lion looks at the person who threw the stick. The lion's not interested, right? The dog is just like, oh, stick, I'll go chase the stick. Oh, so like that. The stick is like our thoughts. When we thoughts, instead look for the source of the thoughts. Where do they come from? So be like the lion, not like the dog. I like that analogy a lot. Anyway, we should conclude there because, yeah. I have to go. I have class at 7 o'clock actually, so I have to go get ready to go to class. So thank you all so much. Bye bye,
dedication.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll do a dedication.
We'll dedicate now first. So think of all the merit we've created together. It's excellent. You know, we've all taken time out from our day to come together here through Zoom online for the purpose of you know, learning something more about contemplating, trying to learn how to put into practice the Buddha's teachings on patience. So rejoice, think how excellent it is.
Thank you. Thank you, Legtsok. We'll see you
Thank
next Sunday.
Wait.
We'll see you next Sunday.
Thank you.
Same time. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next Sunday. Topic is gratitude.
Okay.
Yes.
Pray for all the people who are angry. That's the main thing. May all the people in the world be free from anger. Okay. Bye-bye.
Yes. Bye-bye. Thank
Thank
you all.
everyone.
Yep.